Life Uncensored, navigating adulthood one episode at a time. Tune into our latest episode.
Welcome back, everybody. This is Life Uncensored, navigating adulthood one episode at a time. I'm your girl, Amanda Lockhart Davis, host of Life Uncensored. We have a very special episode for you today titled More Than Forgetting, What Early Dementia Really Looks Like. And we've got some Life Uncensored family members joining us here again to talk about this. You may remember them, Audrey, Wineglass Foster, and Felton Wooten. Audrey is a Washington, D.C. native, and she spent 30 years at Gallaudet University as Assistant Dean and Director of the Office of Sponsored Programs. Leading major federal grant development was her jam. While building her career, she also cared for her parents for many years, managing their daily and complex needs. After losing both within 30 days of each other in 2019, she recognized the deep spiritual, emotional, and financial toll caregiving had taken. Retiring in 2024, she stepped into her refirement, now supporting caregivers through a holistic approach rooted in her lived experience. So Audrey will be joining us to talk about things from the caregiver side of things, while Felton Wooten, who is the founder of Quality of Life, which provides counsel to individuals in their golden years. His career spans 50 years. There's no way it's 50 years, Felton, because you're not that old. You're not that old, Felton. With Felton being the sixth Black nursing home administrator in the state of North Carolina. In 1981, the first and only Black administrator within the Evergreen Senior Health System, and served as the administrator for 13 years at the High Point Evergreens. He is experienced, my friends. In 1997, he was selected as the North Carolina Administrator of the Year by the Activities Professional Association. So Felton's going to be talking to us from the professional standpoint, what he sees in the caregiving space. So that's who's riding shotgun with us today. Please welcome to our stage, Miss Audrey Wineglass Foster and Mr. Felton Wooten.
Hello.
Hi guys. Thank you
Hello.
so much. Thank you for joining again. Welcome back. You, like I said earlier, you are family now. You're part of the Life Uncensored family. And I'm glad to have you guys on today. Continuing our conversation, because our last conversation, we talked about caregiving as a whole in general, right? Needs for our parents, our grandparents, sometimes it's our children, our siblings, aunts and uncles. Today, we're going to get a little bit more specific and talk about dementia, which I feel like is near and dear to Felton's heart. He really talked about how important it was to talk about some of the early signs to look for in this space. I think, and please interrupt me and tell me if you think I'm wrong, I think that dementia is one of those things that is hard to spot early if you don't know what to look for, because people think, oh, well, she's getting older. Oh, you know how she is. She always, mixing up our names, that kind of stuff, right? Because I got 3 boys and I've been calling them each other's names since they got here. So I feel like that's something that happens a lot. Not that it's being brushed off, just not taken as seriously, because all these other factors come in line at the same time with it. What would you say about that, Felton?
I agree. We often pay a lot of attention to high blood pressure, diabetes, and other conditions. But when it comes to our mental state, like you said, people brush it off and they give excuses, but it's critically important that we pay attention to those signs and symptoms that are coming on.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Audrey, we know that you were a caregiver for your parents for a period of time. And then, if I remember correctly, your husband's parents as well.
Mother-in-law.
Did dementia come into play with
Yeah.
those caregiving years?
Yes.
Talk a little bit about that from your perspective. What you saw, at what point it
Yeah.
hit you that something wasn't quite right.
hmm With my mother-in-law, I never did know her without dementia, so I don't really know how
Okay.
she was before that. But my mother was, matriarch, minister, and my shero, and we used to always laugh because my brother would come into town and the three of us, me and my other two brothers, would get together, and my mother would call my house and she would speak to them, and then we would finish talking with her and she would call back. And it happened so often that, we thought nothing of it. But looking back on it, we think that might have been the first symptoms of some type of dementia, because she didn't used to do that, but she would call and she would call back again. And we would make fun of it. We would say, oh, she's calling, you talk to her. I already talked to her, that kind of thing. And that was years before anything really started to happen. She had a very slow decline. I would say probably a good 15 years or so, where she slowly declined. And, so that's really the first signs of it. And then, as it progressed, there was the repeating of the same thing, over and over again, information that just didn't stick. And she was a counselor with my dad. And so she would ask the same questions in a session that she was having with somebody that they were counseling. And but then it was really weird because she was on the accounting team, and for a long time she could still count money. She couldn't answer the question how many quarters are in a dollar on the test that they gave to determine if she had dementia, but she could still count money. Now it got to a point where she could not count the money, and they had to, she had to step down out of that ministry. But yeah, those are some of the things that I remember happening early on and kind of midway before it really took its toll.
It's funny hearing you say about the phone calls with your siblings. When she would call back, was she asking the same questions or saying the same thing? Or was it like adding on, like, oh, and another thing?
It wasn't, oh, and another thing. It was kind of like, having the same kind of conversation, but with one of the other siblings or something like that. And it wasn't, we never picked up that she didn't understand that she had already called, but we just kind of suspect that was like the very, very beginnings of something. It's so, dementia and Alzheimer's, I've heard it called like your brain is like Swiss cheese with like these little holes in it. And it's really weird how the brain tries to compensate for what's not happening. And even the compensation by the actual individual, where they make it seem like they knew whatever it is they forgot. So yeah.
The reason why I asked you that question about the phone calls is my audience is aware my mom passed in 2018. We joke to this day that my mom would always call in twos. So she would call, we'd have our talk, however long it was, whether it's a 5-minute quick call or a 20, 30, 40 hour, whatever, we'd hang up, but we just hold our phone in the hand because we knew she was calling right back. And literally she would call right back. But it was, in her case, it was, oh, and another thing. Oh yeah, I forgot to tell you, so and so called me yesterday, or whatever. But we always, joked about, here, mama calling too, so you just hold the phone. Don't start talking yet, because she get ready to call back. And and I mentioned that because my mother didn't have dementia, but I mentioned that because that could be something that, if you're used to it from one person, and that using that very specific example, seeing someone else do it, but maybe a different context, might be easy. You might overlook it without realizing, thinking, oh, that's her sister. That's what they do, or whatever. So, Felton, I'm going to ask you, what many people dismiss, like what we were saying earlier, these early symptoms as, oh, it's just old age or what have you. So I'm going to ask you, what's the difference between typical forgetfulness and true warning signs, like true red flags?
Right. The red flags, just in one easy description, is that when a person doesn't really understand what they have done, or they might not be able to identify something that they have always known, always done, and yet they can't do it anymore. So an example, like Audrey's mother, who's my cousin also, when she couldn't handle the money or identify and count, those are things that she knew for decades, and she couldn't quite do it. Now, it's a difference, like if you just forget something. But I always give an example. Sometimes I'm talking to my wife and she'll forget something. And she said, "Do you think that's the beginning?" I said, "Now, if you look at that spoon and you think it's a glass or a cup, that's serious. If you just forget something, that's different." So, and the other part of it, I'd like to just share that, like with the calling back, one of the things with dementia is just confusion with space and time. And as we've also said, as human beings, the brain and our bodies are really strong and complex. We will compensate and can quickly adjust the conversation to cover up what may be going on. Yeah. So I think it's so critical in this year and the upcoming years, that individuals be attuned to what's going on with them, and also that family members just don't take it lightly. And I've shared with many people, I say, if I start repeating myself, or if I start doing things that that I should know and I can't do it, let me know. Because the other part of it is the individual may not know this, but others will, but we shouldn't just discount it.
Great point. No, that's an excellent point. Now, Audrey, you mentioned a few minutes ago that you met your mother-in-law in her state of dementia already. How far was she, how many years in had she already been diagnosed at the point where you came into her life?
Oh, gosh. I don't know. Maybe 5 or 10 years, because my husband, we went to the same church, and he would have to all of a sudden drop everything and go to New York quite often. And I didn't really know him that time. We live in Maryland, and I didn't really know him well at that time, but he was doing that for a few years before we got married. And we got married in 2004, and I think she passed in 2013, I think.
Okay.
So
did she already, or not already, because that's a pretty good time apart from when you all were married. I'm sure there was some courting before that. And when she passed, did she know who you were, at least in the beginning? Or were her signs and symptoms strong or a little bit more mild at that point?
So she knew who I was. She knew that I was marrying Fred. The first time I met her, she must have told me the same information about Fred probably 3 times within the same hour. And we sat for a couple of hours.
Gotcha.
And so It was very evident that something was happening with her. She had gotten to, the point where she was no longer able to do her own finances, like write a check, but she was also very concerned that we were trying to take her money. So there was that period of time where she wanted to be independent and do things that she could not do before, that she could do before, but she needed more than just help. She needed it to be done. So yeah, there was a period of time there where those are the things that were going on, and eventually it got to the point where she didn't talk very much.
Okay. And I think it's really important for our audience to know what you just told us that you experienced, because you had someone, when you walked into their life, they were already in the stages. And then you have someone who was in your life for a long time, very capable, that you watched deteriorate from the onset. And those are very two different viewpoints, at least from the way I see it, the way I hear it. And so it's very fascinating that you have that experience, because a lot of people may only have one or the other, but not both at the same, almost simultaneously even. Yeah. So Felton, let's talk about how memory loss can disrupt your daily life in this sense. What does disrupt daily life actually mean?
All right. And I want to piggyback on one thing that you just mentioned, Amanda. It's also, even though I talk about coaching and counseling and helping people in their golden years, just as with Fred and Audrey, it is so prevalent that couples are dating, then they get married, and then all of a sudden that they have to become the caregivers of their in-laws or their parents. So we're finding that more prevalent. So I think our episode that we're discussing this helps younger people who are thrust into caregiving role, either with their spouse or boyfriend or for themselves.
Absolutely.
So then moving to that subject of how it disrupts daily life, it is so critical now that we pay attention to the little signs, because there are interventions and there are different kinds of healthcare modalities that can improve a person's quality of life, but you have to act on it. So as a result, how it impacts your daily life, a person may have gone through the stages of dementia. Family is not paying attention, or they're discounting it. Then they get to a point where they may fall and go into the hospital. And then after the hospital stay, if it's not an acute episode, if it's not hospital required, but they're not required and they're not able to go back home, then they're going to come to the skilled nursing facility where would be the administrator. But if they haven't put some things in place, it will disrupt the whole daily life of the caregivers as well as the resident. Because if you haven't put certain things in place to protect finances or have the ability to converse regarding healthcare or any other important matters, then it's like having a ball and chain on you and you can't move in the direction that you'd like. So as a result, the daily life of the caregivers, the children, friends, and then the resident is completely disrupted, just because maybe we haven't paid attention and owned up to some things that are happening.
So true.
Yeah. And that you bring me to my next question, actually, by saying that, and also kind of going back to what Audrey was describing as far as her mom and things that she did. Managing your bills, right? A daily task that most responsible adults do, right? Following a recipe, things as simple as that. Forgetting can be known as an early sign, right? why does planning and problem solving skills often show changes before families even realize that there are changes? Like, can you speak to that a little bit? Like those particular things, problem solving, planning what you normally do. I know this bill is due on the 15th. I get paid on the 14th. Will be good, or those sorts of things that you've been doing all your life. Why are those things the things that show first in those early signs?
Well, there's so many different types of dementia. So I just want people to understand that
Yeah, let's talk about that.
often people just think Alzheimer's, and that's the category. But I want you to think about it like this. Dementia is the umbrella. But underneath that umbrella, there are types of dementia. So it could be Alzheimer's. It could be frontal lobe dementia. It could be Lewy body dementia. Could be different types. So as a result, the different types of dementia will impact a person differently. So a good example. Now, my father had Alzheimer's. My father was a tailor, a master tailor, had his own tailor shop in downtown Greensboro for 50 years, would make clothes, repair. But he got to a point where, and he's the one who taught me my first job how to hem a cuff. I can put in a flat cuff or the other kind that's rolled up. But I realized early on he had forgotten how to do a cuff. That's something that he knew how to do. He had been trained. So I knew something was going on then. And as a result of that, then I started planning. If I hadn't done something, it would have disrupted our life completely if I hadn't had the healthcare power of attorney, a durable power of attorney, and those kinds of things. So it all depends on the type of dementia that then individuals will see evidence. So like a Lewy body attacks your muscles. So as a result, a person may just freeze up like a board and you can't even move them.
Wow.
So again, the different types of dementia and the symptoms or what you'll see would be different.
I appreciate you for explaining that. See, because listen, you see, I have my pen. I'm jotting down notes as we're talking too, because for until this moment in time, I thought it was the other way around. I thought Alzheimer's was the umbrella, and dementia. So there was different types of Alzheimer's, but not different types of dementia. So thanks for explaining that, because I thought that it was the other way around.
Right.
So it's good to know that, and it's good to share that with the audience, because there's a lot of people who you hear the words, in general what they mean, but unless you are walking the walk with someone or yourself, you don't really truly have a full understanding on something like this and what it actually means and what it does.
Right.
Audrey.
Okay. And correct me if I'm wrong, Felton, but my father did not have a diagnosis of any type of dementia. However, I did notice the first time he couldn't fix something on my car that he had fixed before. He couldn't remember what he had used or anything like that. And this was years before, he had a stroke that we knew of. And then, but there was one day when he called me and said, I need you to start taking care of my finances. I can't pay the bills online like I used to. I'm confused. I need your help. And so I had to take that on. Now, that to me seems like a type of dementia. However, we found out that he had had several mini strokes.
My goodness.
Prior to the major stroke, which eventually took his life. So under that umbrella of dementia, I'm wondering if that would be considered a type of dementia or no, because it's something that affected his brain and he slowed down. He got slower and slower, and it was more than just the regular aging. He got to the point where he wasn't talking a lot. And there were just certain things, I would go to pick him up and he's walking and, you know, everything, but he's not expressing himself like he used to.
Wow.
So to answer that, Audrey, 10 to 15 to 20 years ago, as a society, we had not learned a lot about dementias. So therefore, when your father was experiencing some health problems, the medical profession may not have known enough to diagnose and write that it was a dementia.
Okay.
However, often with other kinds of health issues, dementia will also get sandwiched in with the other medical conditions, because when he identified that he could not do what he normally could do with bills, that is a prime example of a type of dementia.
Wow.
And the stroke may have caused some damage, and therefore it manifests itself in a type of dementia.
Okay.
In addition, let's say in the 80s, when I was always a young administrator, you didn't even find people who were 50, 60, or even 40 with dementia. Now it's very prevalent. It's just continued to get more and more. And then the healthcare profession is learning a lot more about dementias.
I'm glad you mentioned that as far as the age piece of it as well, and onset and whatnot, because I agree. I'm hearing more and more about folks 40s, mid 40s, early 50s who have early onset and are dealing with that, and the different things that come along with someone with dementia. There's a term, and I know I'm going to botch it, so I need you to correct me, Felton, but it's something like, oh gosh, it's something about the nighttime, like when nighttime comes.
Sundowners.
Sundowners. Can you talk a little bit about that? What that means? What it looks like?
Yep. It's just like the cycle of how we wake up and the sun is up and we go through the day. But for individuals with dementia, something happens when it starts getting later in the afternoon or nighttime. So their behaviors change. And it usually happens when the sun starts going down.
Wow. So that would be affected by, or would it be affected by, like daylight savings time?
Yep.
It's literally by the sun being in the sky or not being in the sky,
Right.
regardless of the time of day it is. Wow. So someone caring for someone with dementia that, like you said, having, how do you say it? Having sundowners or going through, how do you use the term?
Either way.
Okay. During the winter, like we know, we go through daylight savings time here in America, and at 5 o'clock on the nose, pitch black outside.
Yeah.
Versus summertime, it's 8, 9 o'clock sometimes before the sun goes down. So does that mean that in the wintertime it lasts longer because the sun is down longer than it would in the spring and summertime?
It could. And I think Audrey will be able to share an interesting perspective, because as a family member having loved ones that are going through sundowners, it's different from a facility where sundowners occur and we can have doors that are locked and nobody can get out of the building.
Gotcha.
So I think Audrey probably can give some insight on, just as a person in the home with someone having dementia and going through sundowners.
Yeah. My mother, the later it got into the evening, her behavior would be sometimes more angry, irritated, that kind of thing. And also it was, I would try to keep her awake during the day so she wouldn't be sleeping during the day, so that she would be able to sleep at night, because at night she's up and roaming the house and getting into things, and it's 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, and we many times having to watch her because she was in a totally different world. She was 20 some years old at Bishop so-and-so's house cleaning.
Mm.
Something that I didn't even know that she did
Was a thing.
but that was her reality, and that would happen most at night.
Yeah.
And then
Okay.
she'd want to sleep during the day, and I'd be like, oh gosh, because I'm still working.
Yeah.
I still got to get up to work, me and my husband. So.
Absolutely. And I have a friend whose father-in-law went through something very similar. He worked for Metro, and he was one of those folks that you would say walk the tracks, right? Safety inspections, things like that. And in the very early stages, he's at a point now where he's immobile, and he, like you were saying, he doesn't speak anymore. But in the very early stages, one time, middle of the night, they got a call. Police had picked him up. He was walking down BW Parkway. He thought he was walking the track. He thought he had been retired for several years.
Yeah.
And he thought he was walking the track, but he was walking down the highway. So I hear that a lot. With sundowners, is the change in behavior always a negative change? Like they're angrier, more irritable? Or is it could be something different? Like, oh, they super happy during, nighttime? Or is it always more of a negative impact in terms of the change in behavior?
Well, no, because for some families, they would feel like it's a negative, and some from others. I've had males and females in their older age, and they become a lot more sexually aggressive and active.
Wow. Wow.
So you got affairs going on, yet the person in the nursing home's spouse is still living. So the behaviors run the gambit of angry to just being very promiscuous or very friendly or just using profane language all the time. So it covers all.
I don't want to make light of this, but it does kind of make me chuckle in my head. That sounds like somebody who's been drinking. You got some people who are angry drunks. You have happy drunks. You got horny drunks. Like
right.
it sounds like that might be something that I just wonder, just my own curiosity, if there is some sort of relation in terms of what part of the brain is affected by alcohol and dementia when we talk about the sundowners.
Yeah. And the thing is, they're happy as a lark, but the families are just stressed out to the max.
Yes. Yeah. No, because I have another friend whose husband, if I remember correctly, his mother, she was in a facility like starting in her 40s, because hers was really, really bad. And he now, like, he's had to leave his job, and it's been a lot. And he is now, that's where I heard the sundowners term. She said he gets nasty mean in the evening times. And her and the kids have just kind of learned to ignore him, basically, like when he gets in that state, and ignore him in terms of he's not himself at that time. So what he's saying, like you said, he get to cussing like a sailor type of thing, which isn't the normal, but they've kind of learned to ignore that piece of it, that it's not anything personal to them. It's just something that his brain, his body is going through at that particular time. And I feel like that's important for this conversation, for people here who might not be aware, or maybe it's just starting. They're starting to see a little bit of that. This might be something that's making it go, this might be what it is. People go to these doctor's appointments with your parents, your grandparents, your loved ones, your spouses, because you just don't know. You just don't know. And there's things that you can communicate from what you observe that might help the medical team out, in my opinion. Would you say that's fair to say, Audrey and Felton?
Yeah. It's definitely important, especially when we made the transfer from home to the facility.
Yeah.
So when we made the transfer from home to the facility, we told them about the sundowners and everything. And she experienced that there. But because they were professionals and it was their job, it eliminated some of the responsibility and the heaviness of having her at home.
Sure.
Because they had people who were up, around the clock, who looking out. And they had cameras and all of those kind of things that really helped.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And I'd like to add that, as you mentioned, going to the doctor with our relatives and family members is critical in what will end up being an impact of your day-to-day life, because people who are moving towards in the stages of the different kinds of dementia can know for sure when they go into the doctor, they often know how they need to act. And they can present themselves in a way that you, the doctor, would think there is nothing wrong with this person.
Yes.
But if you don't have someone going in there with you to say, well, she may be presenting herself like this, but if you've got a log of different kinds of behaviors and things and times, it can't be disputed. But the person is purposely trying to make sure that they don't get labeled with any kind of condition.
Yeah. That happened with my mother-in-law at the bank. When I said, she was always thinking somebody was taking her money. We would go to the bank and she sat there and she was just absolutely put together and talking and sharing with him how this is with the bank, that she was, not sure that her son was messing with her money and da-da-da. And so it makes it really difficult because the bank is like,
because they don't know. They don't know what's happening at home.
They're like, okay, wait a minute. She sounds fine. And we're looking at her like, oh my gosh.
Right.
So that's why it's important. And this is something that I'm helping caregivers, and I'm always asking Felton, for assistance with things like this, but making sure that you get those POAs, advanced directives, all of those things in place before things start to fall apart. Because then you're in the situation where you don't have a POA and she's still got control of her money and you can't get it away from them because the bank doesn't believe you.
Right. And there's nothing legal showing that they need to stop listening to what she's saying.
Right.
Yeah.
And this is a phrase that it certainly sounds crazy and terrible, but just as Audrey said, if you don't have any of those safeguards in place, this is a statement that is used. Adults have the right to make poor decisions.
Yeah.
Adults have the right to make poor decisions.
That's right. That's right. But if you haven't put in place somebody to help you in regards to making the poor decisions, then unless you're declared legally incompetent, that person can go throughout the remainder of their life making poor decisions until something happens or they're declared legally incompetent. But by that time, a lot has transpired within the family, the finances, the home, and the environment.
And when we went and my mother signed off on the POA, the power of attorney, she was a little like giving us the side eye because she didn't trust us, because this is the dementia. This is the dementia taking over. She did not trust that we had her best interests at heart, but she was of sound mind enough to know that, a POA was needed, but she was not, not really happy with us. And so I wish I had known better and had been able to do that sooner.
A little sooner.
Yeah. So, but these are things that are not taught in school. Most families do not know it, and they go through, it blindsides you, and all of a sudden you're dealing with it and it's an emergency.
Yeah. And you don't know what you don't know.
And you don't.
That's right.
You don't. And it's so important to be proactive. It will save you so much time and headache if you are proactive. It's a difficult season anyway, but having some things in place would be really helpful.
Mm-hmm. I want to pivot a little bit and talk about the language piece of it. I understand that changes in language and conversation are also early signs of dementia. What kinds of communication issues raise concern?
I guess one example of difficulty in planning and solving problems. Individuals that you have been around and they're able to communicate effectively, give instructions on what needs to be done, that's a sign that something's going on. And if you notice it enough, you don't want to just discount it.
Gotcha.
Poor decision making, where a good example, my father started having accidents and driving the car. And you might say something to him, but he would still continue to do it and have another accident. So finally, we had to take the keys from him. And he realized when we took the keys, it needed to have been done, but he didn't have the fortitude to do it on his own. So it's all those kinds of things, change in mood and personality. Those are the kinds of things that you watch out for, and you know.
Absolutely. Has there, based on the different types of dementia, do we know the number? How many types of dementia there are?
Oh, I think they're over 50 now.
My gosh, that is wild. So based on that, based on the different types of dementia, is there a way to say, oh man, that's the worst kind, or oh, this is going to be no problem. We're going to get through this. This is an easier kind to deal with, or do they all come with a very specific subset of challenges that are hard to deal with? Because some people say, oh, you got a cold versus the flu. Oh, I'm glad it's just a cold, right? As opposed to the flu. Is it the same way with the different types of dementia?
No, I think they're just as painful. So like Alzheimer's. Alzheimer's is a dementia that you forget the things that you normally know how to do. Let's say you've been used to managing and conducting podcasts, but at a certain point, you don't even know how to do it. But it goes to the extreme of that you forget how to swallow, or you forget how to walk. With frontal lobe dementia, it tends to make people really mean and angry and will fight you. So you got someone who has frontal lobe and you've got to deal with that.
Wow.
Or a good example, I took care of one resident who had Lewy body. He was a world-renowned diver. He loved the water. So when the nursing assistants he'd want to get in the bathtub, but sometimes when he's in the bathtub, the muscles would pretty much become so rigid like a board. They had to make sure they stood there to hold him up because he would slide down and drown in the water.
Oh my goodness.
And they had to wait until whatever the memory was occurring with his muscles to then come back to a state where you can move your arms and legs and stand up and get out of the bathtub. So to answer your question, with the different types of dementias, it's dreadful. I don't know of any type of dementia that people are just saying, oh, that's lovely.
Yeah. Unfortunately. Yeah. This conversation is really good and it's really important. And I want us to take a quick break and come back and continue the conversation. Audrey and Felton, you are being very helpful to a lot of people out there who are either going through or might be suspecting that they have a loved one that is right on the cusp of, or they're starting to show some early signs. So I want to continue this conversation. So give us about 60 seconds, ladies and gentlemen, and we'll be back in just a moment. I'm Amanda Lockhart Davis, founder of Jax Consulting Services, bringing over 25 years of industry experience to our multifaceted consulting firm. With a passion for strategic problem solving and unmatched customer service, we have crafted the firm to offer a wide range of consulting services. From financial management and strategic planning to educational workshops and specialized notarization services. Jax Consulting Services is dedicated to supporting the diverse needs of our clients. Leveraging extensive experience across various sectors, we stand ready to guide your business toward success. That's Jax Consulting Services. Visit us on the web at www.jax-consulting.com.
Take charge of your financial future with our interactive workbooks, The Basics of Financial Literacy, A Healthy Money Mindset, and The Basics of Financial Literacy, A Healthy Money Mindset for Teens and Young Adults. Now available on Amazon. Dive into practical exercises and start building a solid financial foundation today.
We are back, continuing to navigate adulthood one episode at a time with Miss Audrey Wineglass Foster and Mr. Felton Wooten. Thank you guys for coming back with us. We've been having a really great, informative conversation about early signs of dementia and what it really looks like. I want to go right into something that it's going to hit home a little bit. It's going to hit some of the hearts a little bit. And that's how families may feel guilt or denial, or guilt about at first being in denial about some of the signs in the early stages. So how, and Audrey, I'm sure you can speak to this, from the personal side of things, Felton. I'm sure you can speak to this from what you've observed in the facilities. But how do you approach a loved one when you suspect something might not be quite right and say, hey, mom, dad, uncle, grandma, something's not right? How do you go about approaching that lovingly without, feeling like there might be backlash or feeling like they're not going to accept the truth or whatnot? How do you go about that?
That's a hard one.
That's a loaded question.
Yeah. Because like I said, my mom was, matriarch and minister. She was, running things, and she was in complete denial until the day she died that she had any type of dementia. You would say to her, you have dementia or Alzheimer's. No, I don't. But we basically actually went to our pastor and asked him to have a conversation, because she told us not to even tell anyone. And it was becoming obvious that there was something wrong. And she didn't want us to tell anybody. And so we went to our pastor. He intervened and kind of made her, understand. It was a third party. It was somebody in authority that she would actually accept the information from. And that is when, we got had the diagnosis and all of that. She stopped driving, which, that was a big deal, but she agreed to do that. So that's what happened with that case. I have, another somebody that I know, their mother, she just, you talk about the guilt. The guilt can be from yourself, but it can also be put upon you by others. So her mom was telling people that that she that her daughter was stealing her money, that all these things were happening. And she had enough of her brain still working where other people did not see anything wrong with her. And this went on for years where people were looking at her daughter sideways until it got to the point where her mental state began to decline. And then it was like, oh.
Like, oh, that's what was happening all those years ago. And
yeah. But the damage was done.
Because unfortunately, dementia, you don't wear it like a badge. You don't see it. It's not like a broken leg or, you walking around with a neck brace. Like it, you don't know unless you know.
Right.
So I can't imagine what she went through, her daughter, for all that time before.
It was years.
Yeah.
People that poorly about her. So, but yeah, the third party sometimes helps, I think.
And
would you say, Felton, that is typical?
Even in the institution, sometimes as a third party, we can come in and talk with other family members to help them understand, and where maybe someone else in the family is trying to communicate what's going on, but they can't accept it. There's situations where people in the community have been taking care of their loved one, and they got the outline of what needs to be done, but perhaps their mother just won't listen. And they said, Felton, will you come over and talk with my mother? And they know my background. And then I just go in and talk very honestly with heartfelt concern about what are the possibilities of certain things and certain protections are not put in place. And that person will say, oh, yes, let's go in and make that happen. But just like Audrey say, just sometimes having a different person come in and talk to the family or to the individual is helpful in navigating the next step.
And sometimes you can't really talk about the diagnosis or what you're thinking is wrong, but what you can talk about is the POA. You can talk about, the advanced, or you can do these other things in preparation for, and they may be more receptive with putting things in order, putting, finances in order, and take it from that perspective instead of focusing.
Because they're still in control.
Exactly. Instead of saying you're sick, we need to do something. No, these are things. And you could actually say, I'm actually doing my POA because it's not too soon to do that. You could, and make it something where they still feel like they have their dignity and they have some control.
Yeah. I like that. And
it's so important as people are listening to us, for younger people to understand that having a communication with their parents is important. For the parents to understand having communication with their younger children, so that planning and that control is put in place to protect what might happen. Because even if you have a child that is single but an adult, if you don't have a healthcare power of attorney for your child and they need help or they need guidance, they need someone to talk on their behalf, you can't even have any conversation to help them. So having these conversations are critical.
Felton, so are you talking about like an adult child who might be in college, like having something documented so that there is no barrier for the mother or father to intercede on their behalf? Is that what you're saying?
Yes, because once a person becomes an adult, then let's say they go into the hospital. If there's no healthcare power of attorney, then that adult child, the healthcare providers are only going to talk to that adult child. And then if they can't talk to them, then you've got the dynamics of who has the authority and who has been given the authority. So yes.
And that can vary state by state, right?
Yes.
Yeah, who has the authority can vary state by state.
Yeah. So these conversations are just critical because one thing for sure, it's inevitable that somebody is going to need help with care, or you're going to be the caregiver for somebody.
Yeah. Yeah, one of the two.
Yeah.
Absolutely. 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 So we've talked a lot about the caregiving side of it. I want to switch gears and talk about someone listening to this and hearing some of the examples that you all have shared and some of the experiences you've all mentioned. If someone is noticing some of these signs within themselves, what's the first practical step they can and should take?
I think first owning up that something's happening within themselves. Secondly, there are a lot of non-pharmacological interventions that can
Yeah.
help a person. So, and a good example, there was a period of time when I realized my mind was not as sharp as it was, let's say 5 or 10 years ago. Well, I then looked at supplements to help my brain. Uh, so again, looking at different health initiatives that you can put in place. And then I think the third, look at the documents needed so that if you do need help, someone is there and has been designated that you trust can help.
First, first practical step, do not deny,
That's right.
address.
That's right.
Fight, don't flight.
Right.
Right. Right, right. Deal with it head on. We hear this, what's the catchphrase with Alcoholics Anonymous? The first step is admitting you're an alcoholic. The first step is admitting something's not quite right.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So seeing your healthcare provider, talking about supplements, like you said, looking into the different forms that might be necessary just in case things, go downhill, things like that is what you would say are the first practical steps. And then
it might not be dementia. It might
right.
be something else.
Mhm.
But if you don't inquire, if you don't talk to somebody about it, then you don't know. And you're just,
Absolutely.
avoiding it. And that's not good.
Which is why avoidance is not the thing to do. Attack it head on.
Mm-hmm.
They always say in many different things, preventative maintenance is the best maintenance. Don't react. Be preventative. Be on top of what it is that's going on with your health, mind and body. Right.
That's right.
I think that this is it makes sense out loud. Like when you hear it, you always can be like, yeah, so and so, they should do that. But when it comes to yourself, it's, I think it's only human to go into denial. No, not me.
That's
you
right.
know, or the other extreme, which I've seen, oh, my uncle's aunt's daughter's dog had it, so I might get it because we related. Like being overly cautious. And I'm saying overly, maybe I shouldn't say overly, because can you be overly cautious with your health? But you know what I mean? Just being so hyper vigilant and reactive to any and every little thing, it might actually save your life. So if you've got people in your life making fun of you, I have a friend that we joke that she is a hypochondriac. Okay. If she sees a cough syrup commercial, all of a sudden she got that symptom that the little boy had on the commercial, and we laugh about it. But what I can appreciate about that is she knows when something's not right, and she's not scared to speak up and say something's not right, to her family, to her friends, to going to the doctor just to make sure she's okay. There's no shame in going to the doctor and saying something don't seem right. I'm not myself. Normally this happens, but now this has been happening lately. There's no shame in that. And I don't know if the resistance to seeing a doctor is because of pride or because of being afraid of what you might find out, or not. Some people just tell you, I don't trust doctors. Like you hear some people say, I don't trust the banks, right? It's the same type of thought process. But the bottom line is, if you can find a good doctor, good medical team that you trust, and then the family members and friends that you trust. Share the information, get the help that you need. It's better now than later. I just feel like that's just is what it is. So I'm going to ask you what I'm asking this question to both of you. You can each answer. Felton, you answer first, and then Audrey. What gives families hope after early dementia diagnosis? What can be preserved? What support can be given? And what can be strengthened within that family unit? And I'm asking Felton first from the professional standpoint, and then Audrey from the personal standpoint of your experiences.
The strength, especially in organizations, is that you have professionals that you can talk with. You can have support groups to help you navigate with your family, what's going on, what feelings they're experiencing. And then also you have someone in the medical team that you can talk with and find out what are the possibilities, what does it look like, what kinds of things can we do to prevent or slow things down. So institutionally, you have a cadre of people that can talk with you and guide you through the journey, because it's uncharted territory. And it's good to have somebody that can provide wise counsel to you.
I love that. I love that. Audrey?
Some of the same things, at least for me, being in a support group with people going through the same thing that you are going through is very, very helpful. You don't feel as alone. And then you also see that their issue may be even more difficult than what you're going through. That is a good thing, in that, you are prepared for what may occur. And so the exchange of information within support groups. And then also I look at the science and the things that are happening. I think they understand more about dementia than we did, 20 years ago or so, when my mother was first diagnosed. And so that's something that people should be, aware of, that there is science, there's stuff happening all the time, where we're getting more understanding. There are also, as Felton said, supplements and other modalities that can help with slowing down, or maybe managing symptoms. So maybe using things that can help with calming people down, or dealing with pain, or different things like that. There are things out there that, your regular MD may not know about, may not be knowledgeable about. But there are other things out there that you can do to help with different issues. I just, for me, I look at it as, I have a bunch of people in my family who've had dementia. And so for me, I am trying to do things like take control of my own health, using some of those health hacks to help with my memory and all of that. Just the one thing that I think exacerbates illness is fear. And so if you add fear to the mix, that's negative stuff that you're inviting into on top of the dementia, and it worsens things. I can remember just, talking to my mother about something wonderful and exciting, and it could change her mood. It could change the situation. And so I think we also need to work on our own spiritual life, our personal life, so that we aren't just totally just losing ourselves in the negativity of what a diagnosis may be, bringing into our lives. And so it's important to have that support groups, your spiritual life, teams of people that, and also not expecting from people what they just can't give. There are certain
Yeah.
people that's going to be in your family that they are not going to be able to do the dailies, like giving a bath or whatever. They may only be able to pay for stuff, but just relaxing and saying thank you for that and being grateful for that and realizing that, everybody can't do everything. And it,
Yeah.
it takes a team to deal with this type of thing.
And support certainly comes in different forms
Yeah.
for different people. So I'm glad you even mentioned that as well. This was a really, really great conversation. I could literally just sit here and talk to you guys all day about this. Um, just because it's fascinating and I feel like I've learned a lot. I've been taking notes. Literally, I've been taking notes and everything. I'm so glad we had this conversation. It's very important. It's something that we're seeing more and more. We're hearing about it more and more. How many celebrities have we seen have now been diagnosed with dementia? Robin Williams. Robin Williams committed suicide because he was diagnosed with dementia, and fear, using that word fear, right? At least from the reports that we've seen and read. Bruce Willis. Love Bruce Willis in all of his movies. But I tell you, I felt like that was somebody I knew personally, but just and on and on and on. They're not the only, but those are two that come top of my head. But we're hearing about this a lot more than what we used to. So having this information and this knowledge out there is really important for us. Felton, please tell our audience where they can learn more about your work in elder care and the resources that you have.
Yes. Our audience can go to my website, and it is qualityoflifeeldercare.com. Again, qualityoflifeeldercare.com. You can reach me through the website, and then there are also tools that can help you in different aspects of your life.
Thank you so much, Felton. Again, that's scrolling at the bottom of your screen. And for those listening, not watching, it's qualityoflifeeldercare.com, all one word. Audrey, will you please end our show today with telling our audience either your greatest joy or your favorite quote right now?
My greatest joy is that in everything that I had to go through with my parents, with them dying 30 days apart from each other, they left me a legacy, and they left me with a desire to help caregivers. And that's my next chapter in life. After retiring, that's what I'm doing now. And so that is my greatest joy because it brings me a lot of satisfaction.
That's amazing. That's amazing. You all have been amazing guests. Thank you for continuing to be part of the Life Uncensored family. I look forward to having you on again because this conversation about caring, being a caregiver and the information that's just out there that people don't know is very frankly never ending. There's always going to be more to learn about, more questions to answer, and things of that nature. I appreciate both of you for joining me today. And I really look forward to us talking again. I'm going to ask you to sit tight while I close out this show. Ladies and gentlemen, Audrey Wineglass Foster and Mr. Felton Wooten. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Wow, what an amazing conversation. So important, so very important that we are not only paying attention to our own health and what's going on with us and speaking up and speaking out loudly, but also those around us that we care for. We talked about our parents and grandparents, siblings, but as Felton mentioned earlier on in this conversation, it's showing up in younger and younger people. So it might be, your kids. It might be your kids' friends. Keep your eyes open and your ears close to the ground because we can all benefit from early preventative maintenance. All right. I want to make sure that you guys hit that bell. If you're watching on YouTube, like, share, subscribe, follow, all the things. Tell your friends, tell your family, tell your neighbors all about us. Our quote of the day is from Miss Maya Angelou, and I think it's quite fitting. The quote is, "I've learned that people will forget what you said, people will forget what you did, but people will never forget how you made them feel." Keep that in mind as we talk about what early dementia really looks like. For now, and until we see each other again, make sure that you stay hydrated, stay well, make those annual doctor's appointments, and do something kind for someone. You never know. You may change the world.
Life Uncensored, navigating adulthood one episode at a time. We're available on Spotify, YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn. You can also check us out on our website, life-uncensored.com. Come on over and see what you've been missing.